hilltop observatory, and the garden exhaled. Leaves breathed in silver rhythms, slow and tidal. The dome hummed softly, a shell remembering ancient starlight. Mira tightened her shawl and touched the warm brass rail. She counted 4 steady heartbeats, then opened the aperture. The night responded with perfume, damp soil and mint. A comet was due next month, careless and bright. Tonight she sought fainter companions, shy needles and velvet. Her garden mapped the sky, planned to constellation. The rosemary hedges matched Orion's belt, short and disciplined. The moonflowers sat westward, patient as Taurus, and at the note of 2 winding paths, a basin of rainwater mirrored Lyra. Mira moved like a lighthouse keeper, slow and precise. She carried a tin watering can, dented and loyal. Each pour followed a star chart, each sip for a light year. She believed moisture taught memory, and memory taught bloom. Her mentor once said, "The universe loves pattern." So Mira offered patterns back, humble and green. She pruned the cassiopeia time, 4 leaves then 1. She lit the fennel right spirals, small galaxies of scent. She posted the instrument bench, wood stained with star oil. The eyepiece lay waiting, a black pupil. The sided slugged her notebook, its linen cover salt kissed. She dated a fresh page, September's last hush. Beneath the dome, gears turned like quiet cicadas. The telescope lifted its throat, drinking the dark. Mira lined on Deneb, faithful as habit. The star stepped into view, bright as a bell struck once. She listened for the first mystery, the small unfamiliar. It often arrived sideways, disguised as a breeze. Tonight it came as a moth, pale and deliberate. The moth traced a figure 8, then vanished into time's shadows. Her pencil pulled quiet lines, tally marks of wonder. She recorded seeing, a patient 6 of 10. She recorded smell, mint daring lavender. She recorded feeling, a gentle bravery in the ribs. Past the hedge, the town lights blinked like distant campfires. Voices never reached this height, only their warmth. Children slept in terracotta houses, dreaming of rain. Their dreams climbed like ivy, and sometimes grazed the dome. fire set the kin upon gravel, and the stones answered. A creak of heat, a settling hush. She loved how the ground spoke, steady and near. Stars were confiding too, just from farther away. She had planted the first bed alone years ago. The spade was heavier then, and the wind bossier. She measured the north paths by footsteps, 9 per meter. The measurements never matched perfectly, yet the garden kept faith. Her father built radios, thin bones of copper and tin. He taught her to tune for faint weather, storms of static. He said silence was full, not empty at all. Years later she tuned the sky and found his meaning again. She rotated the focus, glass singing a hair's width. A dark lane appeared in Cygnus, thus veiling fire. She pictured seeds sleeping, trusting their eclipse. The universe loved patience, and so did beans. From the mulched border, a cricket sought a lullaby. Mary answered softly, whistling 3 notes. The cricket paused, then continued with embellishments. Collaboration achieved. The night smiled without teeth. A soft lamp glowed by the gate, moth safe and warm. She kept the light low amber for nocturnal wings. The path stones remembered her souls. They held her stride. Familiarity eased the chest, like a door left ajar. At midnight she brewed fennel tea, steam curling like script. The cup warmed her constellation mat, leaving a ring. She traced the ring with a fingertip, naming it moment. Moment orbited her thoughts and tugged them into sleep tides. Beyond the garden wall, old stones kept colder stories. Fossils slept in them, curled like punctuation. She sometimes pressed her ear there and heard buried weather. Tonight the stone murmured rainfall, many winters away. The dome slit framed a river of stars, narrow and sure. She let it pour through her, like quiet medicine. Names rose unbidden, Altair then Alberio. Each name a chord, plucked on inner strings. She remembered a message from a colleague weeks ago. A whisper of anomalous timing, pulses in the Vela field. Nothing urgent, only odd. Oddness was her favorite weather. She welcomed its breeze. Meriton the receiver, a shoebox of careful circuits. Antennae threaded the apple tree. leaves holding skywire. Static shuffled like paper, then parted. A thin heartbeat touched her ear every 12 breaths. 12 was a garden number, stems in a bundle. 12 was a lunar whisper, months knitting years. The pulse seemed calm, neither warning nor plea. She logged it with a dot and saved the tape. A breeze moved west to east, smelling of stone. The basil leaves trembled like tiny green ears. Mira turned her face to the scent and listened. Sometimes the planet wrote letters, folded into temperature. She closed an eye and saw the greenhouse roof. Condensate freckled the panes, patient as pollen. Tomatoes slept there, lunar and red. Tomorrow she would braid their vines, a small constellation of knots. A low-clad wandered by, sheepish and gray. It grazed the dome briefly, tasting metal. Then the stars sharpened again, like flint freshly chipped. She breathed easier with edges, clarity's quiet bell. She remembered the comet's timetable and smiled alone. Comets loved long ellipses, patient as old debts. They returned bearing winter sunlight, saved in glass. The garden would taste that light and ripen softly. A fox tatted along the fence, shadow stitched to shadow. It paused at the calendula, nose twitching prayers. Mira bowed from the path, granting quiet passage. The fox left like a closing book, page against page. She returned to the eyepiece and steadied her breath. The Milky Way pulled in the barrel, intimate and wide. She thought of rivers beneath deserts, water walking asleep. The galaxy felt similar, a buried current of fire. Inside the shed, a clock mumbled velvet minutes. The hands were painted blue to match dawn. Dawn was a friend who knocked gently, never barging. Still, night deserved its whole song. She pinched a leaf of sage and breathed a memory. Her grandmother's kitchen returned, stones warm underfoot. A kettle sighed near the window, and planets of steam rose. That house is gone now, but its gravity remains. The 12-beat pulse came again, as if remembering her. Mira watched the recorder lights, 3 green eyelids. She counted between blinks with finger taps, 1 to 12. 12, she touched the telescope and felt a sympathetic thrum. It might be geometry speaking, she considered kindly. Pulsars kept orderly tempers, stern but generous. Or it might be noise masquerading, pranks of the ether. Either way she would listen and planned accordingly. She moved to the rain basin, home of reflections. The water held vague loosely, like going on velvet. She dropped in a rosemary petal and watched waves braid. When the petal reached the rim, the pulse returned. 12 again, steady as footfalls. The waves and the timing aligned, a soft metronome. Mara smiled at the coincidence, not demanding more. The universe adored echoes and comforted with rhymes. On the eastern terrace, night jasmine loosened its perfume. Bees sucked in its bells, night watch relieved. She touched each stalk gently, passing a blessing. Blessings were another form of data, tender and exact. She plotted new beds in her head, slow cartography, a spiral for Andromeda, fennel and dill, a crescent for scutum, time stitched close. The soil would remember these shapes long after chalk washed away. A bar now glided low, parchment over ink. It skimmed the hedges without touching, an old librarian. The owl's face held the moon, round and deliberate. It blinked once toward Mira, then filed itself into darkness. Another page in the notebook opened, greedy for graphite. She drew the garden's silhouette, a sky-stitched map. Between the thyme and basil, she penciled a tiny comet. Then she left it nameless, as a kindness. Her breath condensed on the eyepiece, a brief veil. She warmed the glass with her palm, whispering patience. The star field resolved like woven linen, thread settling. She felt both very large and very small. Sometimes she spoke aloud to keep the heart company. Tonight she said, "We are gardens of cooled light." The sentence hung there, pale as breath. Then it seeded the soil and vanished kindly. Beyond an ebb steady tone, a flutter was for deviation. Not louder, only skewed by hair. She adjusted declination with thumb pressure, a careful nudge. The flutter steadied, then matched the garden's wind. She smiled History preferred a gentle approach and long friendships. Her friendship with the night was old, patient and amused. It asked little in return, just her listening hands. In the greenhouse a tiny drip resumed, clock without numbers. She pictured roots sipping rhythm, exploring dark lattices. The plants taught her humility and steady appetite. Star-stop perspective, edges softened by distance. A meteor stitched one neat line, south to north. No applause, only a shared breath. Mara lowered her gaze to the calendula and smiled. Great and small traded places with effortless grace. She checked the soil with a fingertip, cool and forgiving. Moisture lingered under the surface, night's quiet bank. She planted 3 seeds of blue flax, pocketing tomorrow. She believed in small deposits and generous interest. The recorder clicked softly, tape whining memory. 12 kept arriving, like a friend at the door. She marked another dot on the page, then another. A constellation of dots gathered and chose their own shape. She gave that shape a working title, Listener's Crown. It meant nothing yet, but felt true. Names could be bridges, slender and sturdy. She walked this one lightly toward the next hour. The next hour came gently, like Mr. Pine. Her shoulders loosened, finally believing the chair. She wrapped the shawl tighter, while remembering sheep. Rest approached without fanfare, a moth for the mind. She closed her eyes between observations, a careful blank. Behind the lids, constellations unbuttoned. The garden appeared from above, a galaxy in seed. She drifted on that map without leaving the chair. An aroma of soil rose warmer, promising to soon. To dress everything kindly, equal and bright. The first beats would pearl the time, lantern by lantern. Then the past would whisper gratitude, stone by stone. She thought of letters unsent to distant colleagues. She would write about pulse and basil, about patience. Some would smile at the mingling, some would frown. Science welcomed many rooms. Hers simply smelled of leaves. The wind turned a page in the notebook, mischievous and kind. It landed on a sketch of winter beds, tucked and resting. She imagined snow like static, bringing tender signals. The receiver would hum softly and learn a new patience. She lifted the eyepiece cap briefly to clear dew. The stars did not mind interruptions. They understood chores. Life was mostly tending, with moments of astonishment. She was ready for either, and grateful for both. Somewhere a far dog barked twice, then slept again. The hillside inhaled together, shrubs and stones alike. Mara held the cheered breath like a cup of tide. She put it back gently where it belonged. The 12-beat pulse softened further, almost affectionate. It felt like rainfall measured, barrel by barrel. She leaned into the chair's wicker, listening without ambition. The night accepted this offering and gave comfort in return. When she stood again, the joints cooperated. She walked the Scorpio path, scorpion only in outline. The path curved like a question, but needed no answer. Questions were good neighbors. They kept the lights warm. She paused at the compost heap, a planet of becoming. Steam rose in thin ghosts, sweet and clean. She said thank you quietly for the returning. Everything returned eventually, seed to light to leaf. The sky developed a faint bruise of dawn, not yet morning. Mary would stay until the bruise bloomed, slow and kind. She had hours yet of darkness, honey thick and generous. The story would continue quietly, at the pace of dew. The bruise of dawn retreated slightly, shy of the ridge. Night settled again with a cat's patience, curling in place. Mara lifted the receiver's lid, checking the tiny spool. The tape looked pleased with duty, edges even and calm. She tuned past Vela carefully, letting the dial drift. A faint murmur surfaced, like minnows in ink. Then the 12 returned on schedule, a soft cathedral. She penciled time stamps neatly, anchoring the invisible. The apple tree caught a breeze, leaves clapping once. And Tanny quivered politely, then remembered their poise. She spoke to the tree, thanking its backbone. Wood carried sky well, better than pride. She visited the rain barrel, counting its rings. Each ring was a drought survived, a lesson held. She skimmed floating twigs, like comets from speech. Water cleared its throat gently, ready to say dawn. telescope breathed in increments, gears like moth wings. She swept toward Aquila slowly, practicing mercy. A dim cluster resolved reluctantly, Pearl still sleeping. She invited them to wake fully, without insistence. Her shawl gathered scents, fennel and limestone. She wore the night like a neighborhood, familiar and tender. Even the insects held space, trills measured kindly. The world felt tuned together, an orchestra of whisper. She remembered equations from school, crisp and demanding. They spoke of gravities and merciful curves. The garden translated those phrases into roots and shade. Both languages were true and both forgiving. A stone shifted underfoot, confessing its age. She adjusted her stance gently, granting the stone room. Balance lived in small choices, repeated with care. She felt taller after kindness, lighter by a leaf. The pulse marked another hour, though clocks disagreed. She trusted this softer clock, carved from distance. Her notebook gathered dots patiently, a gentle snowfall. Patterns leaned toward meaning, like sunflowers to east. She brewed new tea slowly, mint over amber. Steam fogged the red lens cover, softening edges. She tasted the cup's rim salt, seep from her skin. The ocean lived in everything, even hilltop gardens. A memory rose unscolded, a night of rain. She and her father counted thunder, breathing between. He said storms translate distance, flash to rumble. She learned to translate wonder, start to seed. She aimed near the Vela remnant, careful and calm. The field looked ordinary tonight, polite and even. Ordinary often concealed thresholds, doors without hinges. She waited at that door kindly, not pushing at all. Another fox crossed the far path, tail like brush. It paused by the rain lily, smelling petitions. They shared a small nod, two citizens. The night archived the meeting, leaf between pages. She checked the greenhouse latch, snug and bright. Inside a jar of seeds waited, alphabet of future. She chose 3 starward kernels, smooth as moons. They clicked in her palm softly, grammar of patience. She planted them near Lyra's basin, thumb pressed deep. Soil took their quiet oath, sealing promises. She labeled the spot in pencil, shy and erasable. Names might change with weather, meaning would remain. The receiver's hum shifted color, almost to blue. She heard the 12 become 13 briefly, then true again. She didn't chase the wobble, only saluted. Imperfections proved aliveness, like freckles on signals. She thought of the comet's path, stretched like linen. Somewhere beyond frost and dusk, it arced homeward. The garden would read its passage through unseen spectra. Leaves were spectrometers also, green with equations. A hedgehog rummaged near the sage, diligent and small. It nosed a fallen petal carefully, then approved. Mira laughed without sound, a lantern inside. The garden kept cheerful books, debts paid in crumbs. She scanned for satellites idly, streaks of homework. One crossed slow and dutiful, blocking the night. She wondered who watched from there, eyes intent. She waved with 2 fingers, ambassador of time. The wind angled colder, tasting of iron. She fed the small brazier, 1 pine cone. Resin sang a soft hymn, blew at the tips. Heat visited her knees kindly, and stayed a while. A tiny cloud of gnats assembled, held by starlight. They performed a private syntax, commas in orbit. She honored their grammar silently, no red marks. The night graded everyone gently, passed with wonder. She unrolled a faded chart, creases like rivers. Old glue held corners bravely, amber with stories. The chart smelled of libraries, dust and fern. She traced to pencil the lips, her mentor's patient hand. Beside the ellipse, a note read, "Listen wider." She widened the receiver band, 1 notch. Static braided with faint voices, far weather speaking. 12 returned through the parade, steady as rain on tin. She paired the pulse with breath, a quiet duet. Inhale at 2, exhale at 8. Her body became an instrument, tuned to distance. Calm arrived like vellum, smooth and forgiving. A sound from the road drifted, a single tire hush. A traveler passed unseen, lantern moving. She wished them safe miles and soft shoulders. Wishes traveled well at night, light luggage of care. She inspected the rosemary belt, Orion at rest, a strand head overreached, eager with spring. She clipped it back gently, returning the rhythm. The plant forgave instantly, gratitude and scent. Her breath drew nearer the ear, listening within. Thoughts flowed to round stones, warm from sun. She placed each stone carefully, building a fort. Across she walked unhurried, night taking her hand. She recalibrated declination slightly, thumb learning sky. The eyepiece yielded a tight dipple, 2 pearls. Their separation teased patience, breath held soft. She rode their ankle proudly, small triumph of clarity. A course of frogs began downhill, syllables of pond. The sound climbed terrace grasses, stepping stones. It reached her like a letter, addressed in moss. She opened it slowly and read herself calmer. The 12 takes off and once more, nearby his breath. She wondered if soil heard it, roots keeping time. Perhaps radicals sway gently, like dancers unseen. She pictured a ballroom underground, lit by minerals. She turned to the compost planet again, steam gentler now. An orange peel glowed faintly, ember of citrus. She folded it deeper kindly, tucking it in. Tomorrow it would write sweetness in basil paragraphs. The dome slit narrowed briefly to stretch its singe. She eased the wheel clockwise, muscles remembering. The metal spoke politely, oil and patience. Then heaven re-entered neatly, river in a keyhole. A shooting star unstitched west, very discreet. She offered a tiny vow, nothing dramatic. To keep listening well, that was enough. Vows like simple bowls, not ornate plates. She brushed dust from the bench, wood grateful. The pencil shaved a curl, smelling of cedar. She placed the curl in the notebook, bookmark of scent. Memory prefers small anchors, not iron chains. Her colleague's message resurfaced, gentle as kelp. Pulses appeared across weeks, never impatient. She imagined a lighthouse elsewhere, turning its face. 2 gardens under one sky, waving with signals. She wrote a letter in her head, trimmed and calm. We are here in patience. would say. The universe keeps reliable breath, and we count kindly. Send your weather when able, I will fold it in. Her eyes needed a softer task, so she groomed tools. She polished the finder's ring, brass remembering sun. The cloth whispered along edges, setting of habit. The ring blinked awake modestly, shy but ready. The earth rotated like a lullaby, steady and sure. She felt its turn in angles, tiny tides. Every motion had a garden echo, leaf then leaf. She matched that echo kindly, step within step. From the basil rose a small spider, silken spooling. It cast a line into darkness, faith made visible. The filament caught a star bead, to pretending light. The spider accepted the miracle humbly, architect of hush. She shifted to the chair's deeper corner, waker sighing. The shawl made a small tent, rain of warmth. She closed her eyes briefly, counting 3 stones. Sleep skimmed her surface gently, pond without wind. A rustle woke the thin edge, not alarmed. The owl returned on silent paper, editorial gaze. It perched on the gate's hoop, ring of night. They kept each other company, librarians at shift. She checked the recorder's counter, digits like grains. The spool neared its middle, a quiet equator. She flipped the cassette decisively, click of trust. 12 resumed without complaint, river changing banks. Somewhere above her seeing, particles sang. Neutrinos passed like unbothered birds through mountains. She greeted them anyway, civility to ghosts. Politeness was cosmic glue, she liked to think. She listened for the comet's whisper, prelude of ice. Only when answered for now, honest and soft. The promise remained complete, future in orbit. She watered that promise lightly, one can for hope. The east darkened richer again, night deepening first. She loved that trick of dawn, stepping backwards. It taught patience without scolding, a kind tutor. She thanked the horizon silently for its shy theater. She swept a final pass over Cygnus, slow and square. The dark lane looked kinder now, grief with moss. She traced its margin gently, finger on air. Cartography of shadow mattered, as much as light. Then she closed the notebook softly, keeping warm then. The pencil slept beneath the band, quiet companion. Tillis appreciated rest too, like any creatures. Night held them all evenly, leaf to star. The air cooled another notch, making edges tender. Mary tucked her hands deeper, shawl cupping wrists. The dome whispered adjustment, a hinge remembering rain. She breathed with its memory, patient and slow. A hush gathered near the basil, denser than wind. She felt the change gently, like fabric drawn. The 12 count continued steady, beat after beat. But the garden held stillness tighter, as if listening. She turned the receiver one width, hair thin and kind. The pulse blown warmer, not louder at all. It carried a grain of timbre, cedar and evening. She wrote cedar carefully and underlined once. Her mentor had warned, beware naming too early. But names can be bridges, she had answered. Tonight the bridge felt short and safely built. She crossed with bare feet, leaving no splinters. In the rain basin, Vega trembled slightly. Not from breeze alone, she suspected. A faint concentric ripple formed, circle after circle. The timing kissed 12 gently, then glided on. She placed a pebble beside the basin, grounding the view. Grounding mattered at thresholds, like tying boats. Too much drift diluted meaning, she had learned. Enough drift kept wonder supple, she reminded herself. The apple leaves clicked once, like a telegraph. Unmoth approved the message, looping a figure. Mary smiled toward the loop, apprentice of air. The night panned notes quickly, but never messy. She returned to the eyepiece, eyes softened. The star field resembled woven field stone, cool and firm. A dim nebula yawned open, old cat waking. Its flanks showed faint structure, spirals of hush. The receiver throbbed again, a patient tide. On 12 she tapped the railing, brass answering. The telescope hummed in sympathy, friendly and sure. She felt the system align gently, instrument to herb. A sentence arrived uninvited, written inside breath. Listening is a kind of planting, it said. She set the sentence down softly near the time. The leaves accepted it quietly and held warmth. From the town drifted a clock chime, polite and thin. It marked a different hour entirely, human and brass. Mirabeau to both clocks, field and tower. Truth could keep twin tempos without quarrel. She rechecked the apple bark, antennatized snook, the not remembered storms, and held kindly. She whispered gratitude to sap, read and unseen. Trees like thanks best, spoken in season. A letter of frost crossed her mind, months ahead. She saw the garden silvered, breath on glass. Each bed would keep silence bravely, roots knitting. The pulse would still arrive, ember and snow. She tested another bandwidth, shoulder gentle. Static lifted like linen, then settled cleaner. Between the hisses bloated intervals, shy and true. 12 kept its friendly orbit, moon of sound. Her notebook page filled slowly, dots like dew. The listener's crown expanded, sprouting small arcs. She left gaps deliberately for weather to write. Collaboration with chance bloomed, fragrant and calm. She found a stray seed on gravel, black and round. It had escaped the jar earlier, bold and curious. She pressed it near the gate, free but held. Wanderers deserved soft landings, like comets do. A pale cloud sailed south, slim as a wrist. The dome cut its fabric neatly, seen through wool. Light pooled again behind it, clear and cool. She drank that clarity quietly, eyes unthirsty. She imagined the pulse at origin, garden elsewhere. Perhaps a salt plain listened, sun flat and wide. Perhaps the tundra hummed, like in counting time. Or a seafloor lantern blinked, quarrel of code. She did not need answers tonight, only kindness. Mystery wore soft shoes here, and spoke low. She let it share her chair, one corner. They looked at the sky together, like neighbors. I hush-folded over the frogs, then resumed. Even puns take breaths between songs, she thought. She matched those rests gently, body listening. The garden learned her rhythm and soothed deeper. She brought the comet ephemeris closer, Inca River, leaves unfurled, midnight rehearsal. Its new frond tasted darkness and approved. She stroked the air beside it, never touching. Respect leaves no fingerprints, she recalled. The receiver purred companionably, nothing urgent. 12 arrived and folded away. A faint secondary echo followed, child of the first. She marked echo lightly and listened again. Echo repeated thrice tonight, never demanding. It lived 2 breaths after 12, shy companion. She named it Garden Hen temporarily, a helper. The page held both names gently, like seedlings. From the hillside a hare paused, ear to wind. It measured the same intervals, whisker metronome. The hare crossed the path calmly, deciding trust. Trust crossed back toward it, equal and warm. She checked the brazier ash, sulfur and soft. A pine cone skeleton rested, light as moth. She let it cool in peace. Lesson concluded. He remembers kindness best, then returns gently. A low tremor of wind rose, not harsh. It lifted the herb scents higher, mixing rooms. Mint met jasmine kindly, new neighbors. Mara breathed their introduction, smiling at civility. She took 3 slow steps, cadence of stone. The observatory wall glowed faintly, star-rubbed chalk. She touched its cool surface, pulse against lime. The wall answered in patience, centuries in palm. Her chair accepted her weight again, old friend. She let eyelids dim lightly, not sleep. The pulse kept steady company, river unheard. Space wrote another paragraph and turned the page. Above the ridge the bruise deepened, violet and calm. Dawn rehearsed its entrance quietly, steps memorized. Night bowed with gracious posture, pleased to share. Mara thanked them both inwardly, equal and dare. She lifted the cap once more, to a whisper. The field remained generous and precise. She noted brightness changes gently, star by star. The page learned patience deeper, pen following breath. A final fox glance past, eyes like points. It left along the rosemary belt, Pilgrim Road. She blessed its souls quietly, with time. Blessings travel signal overlapped gently, like vellum. She rested inside that overlap, sheltered and clear. Her last tea swallowed warmed, sweet and herbal. The cup cooled in her hands, stone becoming. She set it beside the notebook, Moon. The moon left no tide tonight, only ease. The garden breathed with her again, inhale and ease. 12 kept its faithful courtesy, bowing each time. She bowed back with gratitude, unmeasured and bright. Then she lifted her eyes gently toward patient dawn. The ridge kept its violet promise and held gently. Mirror angled the scope lower, tasting her rise and grain. Stars thin near the edge, as if shy. She welcomed their quiet retreat, like guests at dawn. A dew thread formed on the railing, bead by bead. Brass gathered starlight softly, then lent it back. Her fingers left small clouds, then cleared. She wrote derising now, and dated carefully. The pulse arrived unwavering, cedar still present. Garden hand followed politely, 2 breaths behind. She mapped the pair with duds, rhythm made visible. A third faint echo flirted briefly, then hid again. She stood near the rosemary belt, hands folded warm. The bushes released night's ledger, bright and clean. She read entries aloud softly, moth and fox. The ledger closed itself gently, accounts content. A single droplet fell from apple leaf, clear bell. It landed in the basin, ring upon ring. The rings matched 12 again, courteous alignment. She smiled and bowed slightly, teacher to lesson. She thought of distant desert listening, ear salt. She thought of city rooftops, gardens and boxes. The sky wrote to all addresses, postage paid. She stamped her reply with breath and patience. The dome's curved ribs cooled, taking like seeds. Metal remembered daytime heat, then forgave. Forgiveness traveled well here, path to path. She practiced its small steps, heel then toe. A veil of thin mist gathered, low and kind. It braided with jasmine slowly, silk on air. Her shawl kept the fragrance, pocket of night. She breathed the pocket fondly, remembering kitchens. She nudged the declination wheel, one storm hair. The field studied obediently, humble and sharp. Two faint variables winked, cousins of patience. She sketched their interval bars, thence of time. From the compost planet rose warmth, apple and rain. Microbes labored kindly, unseen librarians. She thanked their tireless study, curriculum of soil. The syllabus promised spring, written in loam. A wind shift, then the crickets chorused a trio. Their wrists grew longer, velvet between notes. Mirror matched the rests again, breath in twos. Peace expanded like dough, rising without hurry. She opened the greenhouse briefly, fog eyelids parting. Vines streamed ladders upward, rungs of light. She checked the drip line gently, pulse of roots. The meter blinked contentment, green and slow. The recorder clicked a new counter, number like rain. Tape wore a memory's groove, tender and sure. She labeled the case with pencil, Cedar 12. Names could change later, bridges remain. She returned to Lyra's mirrored bowl, water listening. Two fell-stitched tiny constellations, sleep for stars. Her reflection blurred kindly, edges erased. She let the blur teach gentleness, lesson absorbed. In the town a window brightened, vaguer perhaps. Flower would soon become morning, needed sky. She wished them soft crusts and warm palms. Wishes were easily shared when delivered. She checked her ephemeris margin, comet line thin. Calculations wore cozy sweaters tonight, gentle math. She penciled the small arrow, homeward arc. The page seemed to lean forward, curious and kind. My hair brushed the time again. The bells chimed. It paused to arrange whiskers, tidy scholar. She nodded with equal ceremony, hedged diplomacy. The hair concluded the treaty and vanished softly. The night thinned to silk gauze, cool and fine. Stars stepped backward gracefully, curtain call. She whispered thank you thrice to the dome. The dome answered with silence, perfect reply. She placed one seat on the rail, heartbeat size. For a moment it listened outward, skyward here. Then she pressed it into soil, near basil. Soil closed like a candle flame. 12 remained faithful, however, measured and warm. Garden hand kept pace politely. Companion note. She traced both as twin paths, leading inward. She imagined the pulse's rainfall over stone deserts. Each impact taught a syllable, patient language. Rivers would arrive someday, given time. Meanwhile, pebbles memorized grammar, round and bright. At the bench she opened a drawer, velvet tools. A tiny brush waited faithfully, soft as dusk. She whisked dust from gears, whisper strokes. The mechanism sighed relief, gratitude in brass. Her grandmother's voice returned faintly. Kitchen planet. Stir clockwise for luck, she heard. Mirror stirred the air once, spoon of hand. The garden tasted luck gently, mint and stars. She wrote a question for tomorrow, ink of sleep. Compare pulse under cloud cover, note variance. Invite colleague to join listening, synchronize dusk. Bring bread to the hill, share warmth. The basil released a final sigh, dew settling. She pinched a leaf politely, blessing exchanged. Oil stained her fingertips, green lanterns. Lanterns dimmed as dawn rehearsed, curtain near. A low cloud brushed the dome, wool on slate. The slit narrowed briefly, hinge gentled. She widened it again carefully, river restored. Stars swam through the channel, school of light. She counted the town chimneys, silhouettes tidy. One carried a thread of smoke, bread song. Another held only pigeons, quiet jurors. All shared the same sky roof, rent paid. A grain bottle fly woke reluctantly, jeweled and slow. It tested the air once, then settled. Even small engines respected night's end, courteous machines. She wished it safe windows, kind exits. She slid the notebook under cloth, warm pocket. The pencil rode its spine, loyal passenger. Tillis liked returning to nests, feathers neat. She smoothed the cloth once, lullaby gesture. The frogs shifted into morning chords, lower and brave. A thrush tested one note, copper bright. Another thrush agreed politely. Duet begun. Music laid a path for dawn. Velvet stones. promise to return at moonrise. Gentle oath. Oaths like the night best. Softer echoes. The receiver's light blinked steady. Quiet lighthouse. She let the band drift closed. Harbor calm. 12 continued in memory alone. Inner tide. Garden hand tucked itself beside it. Hand in hand. She lifted the brazier ash tin. Silver moon. Sprinkled on compost gently. Mineral blessing. Smoke cake kindly from memory. Pine cathedral. Tomorrow's basil would read it. Fluent in green. A breeze threaded the rosemary belt. Harp of herbs. The chords aligned with heartbeats. Tempo true. She touched the nearest sprig lightly. Respectful bow. The sprig forgave the touch instantly. Sent reply. Mara looked to the bruise of east, gaining bloom. Violet widened to rose ash. Careful dawn. She felt the planet welcome light. Spine to heel. Welcome move through the garden. Leaf to stone. She closed the dome halfway. Curtain mid-arc. Another breath with the eyepiece. Farewell glance. The field held steady kindness. Final bow. She covered the glass gently. Sleep mask gone. At the gate she paused for tally. Night's receipts. Foxes 2. Hare 1. Moths many. Pulses counted faithful. Cedar in hand. Gratitude exceeded numbers gladly. Margin full. She returned to the chair and waited, still as dew. Dawn should arrive on its own, unhurried guest. She offered no speeches now, only breath. The garden accepted that offering and glowed. A last star resisted heroically, then softened. The sky unrolled pale linen, smooth and wide. She gathered her notes without sound. Pocket library. The shawl held the night's chapters, fragrant and warm. She imagined future evenings here, comet shining. Neighbors might walk up slowly, cups in hands. They would lean on the railing, learning patience. She would teach listening gently, seed by seed. The first bee fumbled from jasmine, drunk in dawn. It hovered like a soft comma, pause made wing. She blessed its sentence warmly, grammar of gold. Morning would finish the paragraph, later and bright. She locked the gate softly, light reaching out. The note matched 12 faintly, echo inside. She smiled at the coincidence again. Rhyme persistent. Rhyme kept the world neighborly, door to door. On the path she stopped once more. Stone memory. She placed her palm to earth. Thanks spoken. Soil held the message carefully. Vault of patience. The vault would open at twilight. Same key. She lifted her eyes to the ridge. Color ripened. Birdsong braided into basil wind. Gentle rope. She let that rope guide her steps. Kinder path. Night closed its book behind her. Ribbon placed. Morning folded over the hill, and the garden held. Mary walked the stone path slowly, pockets full of sleep. The dome rested half closed, eyelid of steel. She promised a moonrise return in a whisper. She brewed a daylight tea, bright and small. The cup tasted of lemon and patient roofs. Down in the town, bread learned its crust. She wrote a short letter, pulse and garden. Her colleague replied by noon, cordial and brief. Let us listen together at dusk, synchronized bands. Mary traced the phrase twice, ink smiling. She read it to the time, sharing good news. Afternoon settled like linen, cool on chairs. She mended a frayed strap, stitch by stitch. The tool belt thanked her softly, leather relieved. Caregivers need care too, she murmured. She napped in the green health shade, breath and leaves. Dreams wandered through fennel, slow and bright. A comet walked a hallway, slippers of ice. It waved without urgency, neighborly and shy. Evening arrived with copper clouds, edges lit. The first star pricked silk, sewing night. Mara lit one amber lamp, mothwise. The gate clicked a soft greeting, hinge content. She opened the dome carefully, seemed to sky. The telescope stretched away, cat of brass. She tuned the receiver's throat, breath aligned. A hush gathered like velvet, ready to sing. The apple tree wore new wires, tidy and kind. She checked strain of the knot, bark unhurt. Leaves approved with a single clap, green applause. And Tanny felt taller tonight, listening well. Her colleague signaled on time. a shy tone. They synchronize by counting breaths, 12 apart. The channel cleared like rain glass, view washed. Then Cedar 12 returned gently, right on cue. Garden hand arrived behind it, 2 breaths true. A third echo steady this time, fern soft. She marked it fern light briefly, pencil light. Names stood like pebbles, crossing a creek. They compared notes aloud softly, over air. Her friend reported drizzle in the south, tin roofs. Mara reported jasmine wind and basil. The pulses ignored weather mostly, constant and kind. She tried a gentle experiment, hand to soil. On each 12 she pressed lightly, earth to palm. The receiver colored a shade warmer, cedar deepened. She stopped and waited, then pressed again. Garden hand seemed to lean closer, second voice. Or perhaps her breath imagined, kindness echoing. Either way the page acquired confidence, dots sure. The pattern looked it like birds, coordinated and calm. Moonrise silver the dome edge, narrow smile. The garden exhaled cool incense, mint and stone. She aligned on Aldera first, steady friend. The eyepiece poured river light, soft and swift. She whispered to the basil border, house of green. We are listening together tonight, leaf and star. The stems held the slow sway, choir of small. The pulse matched their motion, kind coincidence. Her colleague counted clouds now, one thin veil. The signal softened slightly, still present. They adjusted gang in tandem, like dancers. Distance learned their choreograph and bowed. A fox returned for census, tail lantern. It placed a paw exactly on 12, then moved. Mare laughed under breath, delighted and calm. The notebook received a paw mark, graphite paw. She widened the pen one lace, listening wider. A far shimmer trembled there, mica of sound. Not new exactly, only seen. She labeled horizon noise kindly, then continued. The rain basin kept moon coins, silver stack. She tapped the ring gently once, ring clear. The ring faded into 12, braided tones. The page wrote ring equals 12, hypothesis. nemesis smiled. A breeze read the rosemary belt, paging leaves. Orion wrestled politely, not hunting. The belt matched her breathing, link and link. She wore that Tom-like wool, shoulders eased. They attempted a coordinated silence, 2 gardens. On a shared count they held breath, then listened. The echoes hushed respectfully, then returned. Courtesy exists in physics too, she smiled. A distant satellite slid south, Tin Pilgrim. She imagined someone noting dawn from colder air. She sent a greeting upward, Time Ambassador. Gravity held the envelope tenderly, then filed. She traced Listener's crown again, now complete. The constellation she invented wore patience well. It faced the basin's rim and waited. Names became gentle furniture, rooms of meaning. Her colleague whispered a wonder. Fernlight agrees. Their echo timings matched nearly, coast to hill. The idea grew leaves immediately, shared plant. Distance could harmonize softly, without wires. Mira brewed night fennel again, and his moon. She set a second cup aside for absent friend. Steam wrote a small letter into air. The letter folded itself gently and sailed. She let the scope drift slowly, sidereal. The stars walked across glass, docile and bright. A globular cluster gathered bees, honey of fire. She tasted the idea briefly, sweetness of many. The receiver held its lantern, wick low. 12 kept steady service, clock of distance. Fernlight softened in intervals, moss paste. Garden hand waved in between, helper true. She planted a quiet experiment, basil and bell. A tiny chime hung near stems, metal hush. On 12 it trembled slightly, breeze or beat. She wrote both causes friendly, no quarrel. Midnight passed without sharpness, silken wool. The owl clocked its route, ledger clean. The hair left only rumor, due line. All citizens accounted gently, town of night. She asked the sky a question, softly phrased. Is patience a universal language or local weather? The pulse answered with presence, not grace. presence translated perfectly into calm. A slender cloud cooled the moon, milked light. Shadows softened to velvet, corners gone. Her shoulders fell another inch, weight set down. Relief traveled the herb paths, neighbor to neighbor. She pressed an ear to the wall, limed age. The stone spoke in slow vowels, deep rain. Between vowels a consonant of 12, careful click. The wall had learned the rhythm by listening. They ended the joint session kindly, notes aligned. Good night from the south, and thank you. Good night from the hill, and gratitude. Distance closed like a gentle book, ribbon placed. Mira stayed with the stars a while, slower now. The comet felt near and thought, not in arc. Nearness can be a kindness, she remembered. She let kindness be sufficient, and breathed. She watered the rosemary belt lightly to assist. The droplets stored moonlight briefly, savings bright. Interest would pay at dawn, leaves aglow. Economies of gentleness worked, compound calm. A final check of gears hummed, friction small. She brushed the teeth with oil, hem of brass. The instrument promised accuracy, oath kept. Promises like these comfort roots, steady rain. She closed her eyes beside the scope, lantern low. Listener's crown hovered behind lids, gentle shape. The pulse became a cradle, rock and rest. Sleep approached on garden paths, unhurried and sure. The hill wore hush like linen, cool and kind. Mira woke before the first bird, quiet as dew. The dome remembered moonlight faintly, metal dream. She rose with the garden's breath, slow and sure. Another night invited listening, steady and bright. She brewed fennel gently, and a slough. The cup warmed her map again, ring of moment. Moment orbited her pulse softly, tight within. She opened the slit to stars, scene reborn. The telescope lifted obediently, brass vertebrae. She tuned to Vela patiently, field of hush. Cedar 12 arrived on time, faithful bell. Garden hand followed tenderly, 2 breaths near. Fern light brushed the margin, moss on stone. She nested their dots together, crown hush entered between beats, thinner air. Not silence, but a different room. She widened band one petal, careful grace. The hush revealed a shy thread, winter bright. She thought of distant ice returning, debt repaid. The comet's lips breathed closer, thought the thought. The thread timed against 12 gently, shoulder rhyme. She penciled comet rumor softly, not claim. From the basin rose a ripple, coin awake. Vega bent its silver slightly, ring of yes. The rosemary belt leaned listening, buckle bright. The garden gathered news kindly, leaf to leaf. She pressed both palms to soil, gratitude warm. We keep time together, she whispered. The receiver softened its lantern, wake of trust. Trust traveled the cables gently, apple to sky. Her father's radios returned briefly, copper bones. He said quietly in memory, silence full. She answered with basal laughter, small and real. The pulse nodded agreement kindly, dot by dot. She aligned on the dark lane, Cygnus hush. Dust wrote a velvet geometry, curve and veil. She traced edges with patience, cartographer heart. Shadow became readable music, bar by bar. A breeze stitched jasmine to mend, ribbon scent. The owl's page turned softly, margin note. A hair signed attendance briefly, whisker boat. Knight's council met without speeches, quorum reached. She invited her distant friend again, breath sync. Two gardens held one tempo, coast to hill. Cedar 12 crossed both distances, same kindness. They rested inside agreement, shared hush. A thin line brightened low east, ember thread. Not dawn yet entirely, only promise. The comet's rumor breathed there, ice foul. She did not chase, she simply welcomed. The basin made a new circle, delicate ring. Ring kissed 12 and wandered, cousin rhythm. The notebook learned a softer grammar, pause words. She underlined listening gently, twice then closed. She rose and walked the paths, herb atlas. Each bed held its constellation, rooted stars. She touched no leaf directly, respect intact. The garden answered regardless, passing truths. Enduring truths lived quieter in soil time. She cherished both kindly, open hands. She set the receiver to rest. Dim lamp. 12 continued inside ribs. Inner bell. Garden hand kept its place beside it. Helper still. Fern light folded into moss. Bed made. The dome closed to measure dark. Steel eyelid. She covered the eyepiece softly. Dream kept. The chair accepted her breathing. Cadence sure. Night placed its ribbon gently. Chapter done. On the ridge a pale scene widened. Dawn thread. She stayed to witness the handoff. Star to leaf. The garden greeted morning slowly. Grateful choir. Mare answered with quiet joy. Seed of rest. Before leaving she wrote one line. Closing note. Listening is a garden, tended by time. She dated the page with dew, soft ink, then stepped into the day gently,